This is our plan for 2022. So I'm going to go through this. I will skip over or touch lightly on some of the slides because, of course, this is also online and you can read it. And the critical thing that we need to remember is that the internet is a process almost. It's a thing that happens rather than a thing that stands on its own. It's not like tables or chairs or coffee cups. It doesn't sit around and just be. It's something that happens as a result of the interaction of various networks that exist independently. And so what we have to do is make sure that the internet is viable, make sure that it is stable, make sure that it is growing and healthy. And that's what the focus is here, to make sure that the people who come after us will have this inheritance just as we have managed to receive it from the people who made it for us. When I came onto the internet a million years ago, the internet was obviously good. Everybody thought this is such a clearly good thing. And so if you asked anybody, do you want access to the internet? Everybody just embraced it. But we don't live in that world anymore. There are a lot of people who wonder whether the internet is such a good idea. And that's not okay. Because the fact of the matter is, here we are, we're able to have this meeting together over the internet. When I was growing up, this was total science fiction. This was a completely imaginary world in which you could actually do this. Right? We watched it on television, but it was not something that you could imagine happening. And here we are, we're dependent on this. And not everybody has access to this marvelous tool. And we need to make sure that they do. Not everybody has access to it reliably because there are various shutdowns and so on. And we need to make sure that people understand what they're doing when they shut off the internet. And the internet itself is gradually being eroded by the acts of both corporations and governments. And we need to make sure that the internet is here for everybody. And so that's why we're here, to advocate for the internet, to be open and globally connected, secure and trustworthy. That's what the Internet Society is all about. So we have three components to the way we work on these things. One is an emphasis on making sure that the internet is stronger. We need to make sure that it continues to be a force for good for humanity. And that means that the internet needs to be strong. We also need to make sure that the internet grows. Nearly half of the world still to this day does not have connectivity, and that is wrong. And we need to make sure that people have that access. And we need to empower the community. We need to make sure that the community grows and is healthy and is strong. So the first element of this is our effort around community networks. We believe that community networks are fundamentally building blocks of the way the internet grows. When I was at a meeting a number of years ago and somebody said, oh, you can't do this with community networks, one little network at a time. That's not what we need to do. We need to make a big bang. And all I could think was, how did the first half of humanity get connected? It didn't happen that like Zeus or God or whoever came out of the sky and poof, half the world is connected. No, we built one network after another. And that's what community networks is all about fundamentally. It's making sure that new kinds of networks get the kind of connectivity that they need. And we put that ability in the hands of the people who need to build and who need the networking capability. So we need to make sure that people have this capability themselves. The other part of this connectivity, and I shouldn't say the other part, but like another part that is very important, is making sure that the peering infrastructure is good. So the internet has grown. We just had yesterday the Internet Hall of Fame. And one of the critical points in there was we were recognizing some people who'd worked on early routing efforts. And one of them made the point that the routing system, the early developments of BGP, took off in part because this protocol was flexible enough to be used in environments that they hadn't even invented yet. Internet exchanges were not a thing when BGP was invented, and it facilitated the ability for internet exchanges to grow and for peering infrastructure to happen. And there was another person who was honored yesterday who talked about those early peering events and those early developments among people who are trying to make sure that the networks are interconnected in this reliable way. What's interesting about internet exchanges is that they make the internet a reliable system, even though it's built out of unreliable parts. And so you can build an IXP for very little money, And yet you get a system that is much more reliable than other systems that could be built in other more centralized ways. And so the development of IXPs remains a critical effort for the Internet Society, precisely because it makes the internet more reliable, more useful for more people. The other part of developing that peering infrastructure is to make sure that the communities who support it can build it. A lot of the time, what happens in development efforts around the world and in technical efforts to promote various kinds of technologies is people say, hey, bam, here's the technology, now go have it. But that, of course, is not a reliable way to make a technology that is sustainable. What you actually have to do is build a technology that people can run and operate and so on themselves. And so that's the other part of building that peering infrastructure, is making sure that the communities who need to operate it have the understanding, have the capacity to make sure that this peering continues to work reliably. In order to make sure that all of this is actually working, we need to measure it. And this has been an area where the Internet Society has been investing over the last little while. And of course, we're going to continue to do that next year. We continue to press forward with this. There was just another piece of it launched yesterday. So I think this is a great platform. And the nice thing about it is that it's a sort of clearinghouse. It's not that we're doing all of the measurement ourselves. It's rather bringing together a large amount of measurement from lots of different sources, because lots of people are doing measurement on the internet. But what this does is gives a way to see it and put it all together and make sure that we understand how the internet is supporting everyone. Another problem that we have, there's been a lot of question about low Earth orbit satellites. We're going to do an investigation this year to understand what all the hype is about and whether the hype is actually going to play out in reality, or if this is just going to be another promotion. So that's something that's coming, and we're developing a public position about this. So this will be an Internet Society position. This will go through our standard policy development process. Now, we need to make sure that the internet is strong as well. And the first one of these is to spend the last couple of years developing this idea of the internet way of networking. And now we need to make sure that everybody embraces it and everybody understands that the internet way of building networks is one way of building networks. There are other ways you can build networks. Telephone systems were networks. Other people have new proposals. But we think that the internet way is the best way for us all to depend upon. And so we want people to embrace that and make sure that this is the basis on which we're going to continue to build things. We have a lot of people in the world who are not really that keen on the internet. They want some other kind of network, probably one that they will control and run, probably for their own financial benefit. But we believe that the internet way, this one that is open, that is globally connected, that is secure and is trustworthy, we think that way is the way to build it. And we want to make sure that other people embrace it as well. Encryption is under threat. End-to-end encryption is a necessary condition for us to have the kinds of networks that we want, for us to have a system that is secure and that is trustworthy. We need it. And yet people are trying to take it from us. And that is wrong. And we will continue to work with our colleagues in the Global Encryption Coalition to try to make sure that this gradual erosion of end-to-end encryption does not continue, because it's very dangerous for all of us. Without this tool, we will not have the internet, because it will not be a trustworthy system. And so we have to have it. One of the reasons we have to have encryption is to secure global routing. We've got a system that is a network of networks. These networks interconnect with one another. And so they have to have a routing system. And that routing system needs to be trustworthy. And we've worked on this for a number of years now. The community is ready to pick this up and carry it forward. And so we've been incubating this for a long time, but now that community is ready, and they're saying, hey, we want to do this. And so we're supporting that. We're here to make sure that the internet community has the support that it needs in order to take over this important task. And that's one of the critical things that we're going to continue to work on this year. Securing global routing is just absolutely necessary to have an internet of the future. In order to have the internet of the future, we also have to have research. The future doesn't make itself. The future is made now. And what some people sometimes say is that the best way to predict the future is to make it. And so that's what NDSS, that's one of the things that NDSS is about. investing to make sure that people have the ability to understand what the future is. And this symposium is one of the best in the world. So we're going to continue to support it. There's a lot of talk these days about digital sovereignty. We don't exactly know what digital sovereignty means, and this is a consistent problem because often when political discourses import a term that is not very well defined, it's a danger, right? What that really says is, hey, we're going to sneak something in under this term. We don't understand what it means. So the Internet Society is going to develop an understanding of what digital sovereignty means. We're going to develop a sort of categorization of all of the ways that people use this term. And we're going to talk about which of these things are things that we believe are consistent with the Internet way, and which of these things we're less convinced are actually consistent with the Internet way. Now, I mentioned that the third prong of what we do, it has to do with the community, and so that's what this section is all about. One of the first things that we need to make sure is that our chapters and our chapter leaders are well supported. And so we have a whole effort around supporting chapters and chapter leaders with training, networking opportunities, and so on. So this is one of the things that we're going to work on this year. Some of you will have noticed that over the last couple of years, we've been working on special interest groups in order to make sure that system is well supported. Historically, this has been a bit of a challenge. We've come up with a new plan for how to do this. And thanks very much to all the staff who've worked diligently on this and all the community volunteers who have contributed to the effort around resetting the way that special interest groups work. This has been so far quite successful. This year is the sort of implementation of that. And we've got the 5 special interest group topics. We've got the standing group topics. We're going to implement that this year. I'm looking forward to this because I think it will put the special interest group program on a solid foundation. Individual membership at the Internet Society has been tricky for a little while. And the reason for that has in part to do with some people want to focus on chapters, other people want to focus on individual membership. And we haven't always done a good job of bridging these two things. So this is a core focus for this year to make sure that membership in the Internet Society for individuals is a valuable thing, something that is individually useful to you. That is not to say that we are deprioritizing chapters. It is rather to say that we want to make sure that the individual membership in the Internet Society is also a strong and beneficial thing for all of the individual members of the Internet Society. We continue to invest and invest quite a lot in our learning and training efforts. This has been a thing that is close to my heart. I don't know if all of you know this, but I'm a failed academic. So years and years ago, I used to teach, and I still miss it. My career took a different path, but I still want to invest in it. I want to make sure that people have the opportunities that I got when I learned about the internet. And so we're continuing to work on that. And this is an area of important focus for us. So I hope that you will take advantage of those opportunities. We need to make sure that we have a future community. The internet does not work just by sitting around. It works through all of this collaboration and so on. And so we need to make sure that we invest in that future. And that's why we have these fellowship programs. One of them launched this year. The second one is coming up next year. We continue to invest in the IGF Youth Ambassadors. We continue to support the Internet Engineering Task Force. We want to make sure that all of the future is as bright as it should be. And that's what all of this advocacy investment is about. Many of you will be aware that our current association management software, Member Nova, is offline right now. And we're aware that this critical resource has been a source of some weakness. We need to continue to invest in that. We need to improve our systems to make sure that the community has the kind of support that it needs. And so this is a very high priority. It's an even higher priority like this week than it was last week. And this remains an issue that is very, very important. But I think the fact that we're having this outage actually highlights why this is a critical thing for us to invest in. We also need to make sure that the Internet Society is itself healthy. And part of that is financial health. So we're very lucky that we have the resources of the Public Interest Registry, and it contributes a great deal to our budget from year to year. But it's never a good idea to just have one source. And it's never a good idea to have an organization that is all dependent on that one thing. And also, frankly, the resources that we have are great, but they're a drop in the bucket compared to the people who are opposed to the internet. Any nation state in the world has more resources to put to this than we do, and we have to work all over the globe. The large tech corporations who really, let's face it, want to own the online experience, they all have quite a lot more resources than we do to put at this. So we're going to continue to improve our financial health, broaden it. We're going to raise some more money, but much more importantly, we want the sources of them to be more diverse. And that's a very big focus for the next year. We're also going to start a legal precedent effort. And this is going to start in the United States, in part because the United States has a really funny legal system. And it's a legal system where you get to intervene even if they didn't ask you. So in the United States, you can make a filing with a court for any court case at all, where you can say, hey, court, you need some advice. You don't know that you need this advice, but you need it. So we're going to give you some advice. In most legal systems, I'm in Canada, for instance, you can't just show up at the court and say, hey, you need some advice. They have to ask you. But in the United States, for whatever reason, you can butt in and tell them they need some advice. And so we're going to start there. Courts in the United States are also very influential in the way public policy is shaped. And so we're going to work on developing this capability in the US first. If this is successful, we're going to start with up to 6 cases. We don't know if it's going to be all 6. We're going to build this, and then we're going to potentially expand on this program in other jurisdictions according to their legal systems. But we're going to start in the United States. This is a new area for us, so we don't know how successful we'll be at it. That's why it's called out here as a special thing. That doesn't mean that we're stepping away from other kinds of presidential activity. We continue to work with governments. We continue to work in international organizations and intergovernmental organizations, just as we always have. But this is a new way in which we're going to try to build, promote, and defend the internet. We are, I say this all the time, and I think people are getting tired of me pointing it out, but it's really important. We're the Internet Society. Societies work when we work together. Societies fall apart when we work at loggerheads. So we need to work together to make sure that the internet grows, that the internet is strong. We need to make sure that our reputation as the Internet Society, and that includes all of the community, is this movement of people who are driven by this shared vision. Because the internet is for everyone. And we must not let that go. So I hope that this overview of what it is that we're aiming to do in the next year cheers you and makes you feel like you want to come along. You want to put your shoulder to this wheel too. Because without all of you, this plan is going to lie fallow. It won't work. We need everybody in the Internet Society to make sure that the internet really is for everyone. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. The floor is open for questions. So if there is any urgent question for Andrew.
Okay, this question is, what is the role of ISOC Foundation in the implementation of this action plan?
So a critical thing to understand is that the foundation has an independent action plan. You can also look at the foundation's action plan. It's on the foundation website, isocfoundation.org. But there's a complementarity to it, right? So a big part of what the foundation does is it invests in our community. That's one of the things that it does. So beyond the net funding, for instance, comes from the foundation, and it flows through the Internet Society, but it comes from the foundation because they have the ability to do the kinds of measurement that we need for those sorts of grant programs. But the other thing that I will point out is that we've had quite a bit of success with some chapters who are involved in other programs that the foundation is doing too. And that's actually part of the goal of the foundation, is to develop this capability. So the beyond the net funding is reserved to chapters. Only chapters can apply for it. But there's nothing about the rest of the programs that excludes chapters, and chapters can get involved in them individually or together, because a lot of the grant programs are intended to work internationally. And so there's an opportunity there for very significant funding, and something that the Internet Society could not support directly just because we don't have the necessary staff and expertise. Instead, that expertise is inside the foundation to help with the grant administration and developing the capability of the grantees. I hope that answers the question. Thank you very much to everybody for coming today and for hanging in for this extra time. I certainly appreciate it, and I'm glad to have been invited. Thanks for all the work you do. And let's make sure, like 2022, let's continue to work to make sure that the internet is for everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me today, and best for the end of this year, and a happy and healthy and successful 2022.